This is Radio itvt. I'm Tracy Swedlow. The following podcast is a session that was held at the recent TV of Tomorrow show in New York City, 2014, in early December. It's called Putting It All Together, the 360-degree UX. It was moderated by Gerard Kunkel, who's founder of Nautix.tv, and it featured Sean Besser, head of platform appeal, Rebecca Rusk-Lim, VP of Interactive Experience at Turner Broadcasting, Adam Lowy, General Manager of Interactive and Advanced TV at Dish Network, Adam Rellis, Head of YouTube Space New York, and Scott Rosenberg, VP of Business Development at Roku. I hope you enjoy it. This is Tracy Swedlow.
I wish I could say I memorized all of your bios, but they're long. So Adam is head of YouTube Space, New York. If you don't know what YouTube Space is, you will shortly. Prior to running the New York space, Adam oversaw many of YouTube's top partnerships and strategic efforts. And I believe you were there at the beginning of the channels, YouTube channels. Very interesting to hear more about that. Thank you very much. Rebecca Rusk-Lim is Vice President of Interactive Experience for Turner Broadcasting. Rebecca established and leads the Turner UX Center of Excellence. Rebecca is a 25-year veteran. I've known Rebecca for probably most of those 25 years. And she's worked for Stars Entertainment, TCI, AT&T Broadband. She also worked over in Asia as the Hong Kong Bureau Chief for what is now CNBC Asia. A very interesting background. You and I both come from traditional media. One quick and important note, Rebecca is Cablefax Magazine's top woman of the year in 2014, 13, 12, 11, 10, 8, and 6. So I have only one question. What were you doing in 2007 and 2009, you slacker? Scott Rosenberg. Scott and I have known each other for a while as well. In his role, Scott is the Vice President of Development and Content and Services at Roku. In that role, he leads advertising business, partnering with major content and consumer brands to market the Roku audience. So you're aggregating audiences and selling them. Prior to Roku, Scott led Umami. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Good enough.
Okay.
But he's gone.
Thank you. A VC-backed startup enabling companion TV experiences. Scott also led the advertising business at Rovi. Moving on, Sean Besser, head of platform at Peel. Sean heads up Peel's Peel In platform, which enables TV networks and producers to increase viewership by posting a unique tune-in URL on social media. And Sean comes to Peel from GetGlue, a name they're very familiar with this audience here. And prior to GetGlue, you ran business development for Rovi, another name very familiar to this audience. And then finally, but not least of all, is Adam Lowy, General Manager Interactive and Advanced Television at Dish. In Adam's role, he oversees sales, business development, strategy, and execution of interactive and advanced TV. Before Dish, Adam held multiple positions at Canoe Ventures, also a very familiar name here at this audience. And you were Vice President of Sales and Operations and Development, as well as Vice President of Business Development and Product Strategy. You had a lot on your plate back then. You were also VP Branded Entertainment and Online Integration at CBS, so you have a traditional media background as well, as much as broadcast television is traditional media. So, folks, I'm going to take you through a couple of slides here so that we can have you describe, please, if you will, what you do at your organizations. And Adam, we're going to start with you. So I'm going to control your slides. Just kick me or tell me to forward, please.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm Adam Rellis, head of YouTube Space New York. As Gerard mentioned in his intro, we are focused on user experience in a much more almost like a retail sense because we are a physical space. There are 5 YouTube spaces now globally, along with the one that just opened in New York. We have one in LA, London, Tokyo, and recently also Sao Paulo. Next slide. You could think of us, well actually, are any of you familiar with YouTube Spaces? Raise hands. All right, like two people. So you can think of us as partially community center, partially a studio facility, and we operate under these three pillars, which are learn, connect, create, and we focus on offering workshops taught by experts. We offer social events so that creators can come in and connect with one another, and we offer physical studio facilities and equipment, all free of charge and available to YouTube creators of different levels. In the background there, you can see actually the lobby of the Space New York, which we call Studio A. And beyond here, I have a little sizzle video just to show you, because what would a YouTube slide presentation be without some video, of some of the things that have happened at the spaces globally, and then a few pictures of what we launched recently in Chelsea Market.
YouTube space, and this place is so awesome.
That's awesome! Really well, we're like one big family.
It's like a huge playground.
This is really the heart of where it's all happening.
Okay, and I have a couple of photos here just of the space, which I'll quickly run through. This is our north hallway, and the reason why I put a picture of a hallway in here actually is to show you the lighting grid that's also up in the hallway. And we consider everything at Space New York to be shootable, so we know that creators will come in and they'll pick up a camera and they'll make use of every sort of corner. And so I wanted to highlight that in at least one of the photos. Go to the next one. We also have this idea of permanent sets built into the studio facility. So this is a sort of quintessential New York diner, and the idea being that people can sit down there and have lunch or talk over a coffee, or set up cameras and lights and actually shoot videos there. In the background, the scenery goes from day to nighttime, or you can put green screen over there to sort of change your backdrop. And then the last photo that I brought is in one of our enclosed sound stages. We have 3 enclosed sound stages at the facility, and this one happens to be dressed with original pieces from the iconic rock club CBGB. So we did a partnership with them, and they took apart the club piece by piece when it closed down, and we worked together to sort of build an environment there to bring musicians and other creators in to be able to play within the walls of CBGB for the first time since it closed down.
Very nicely done. Thank you, Adam. Rebecca Rusk-Lim.
Well, I'm going to talk, go ahead, a little bit about one of the things that's near and dear to a lot of us as broadcast companies, which is TV everywhere. And that, from a UX perspective, I'm just going to take it, go into some examples, but you can see all these networks, and then you can see all these distributors. And the way the user accesses all that is through the picker. So one of the things when we established the UX Center of Excellence at Turner was all the different brands had all different pickers. And so for the user, they were confused, and plus you couldn't count it and couldn't figure out where the fall off was, so we unified the picker into something that, you go to the next one. This is the key thing right here, is to think about, and I know we're going to talk about this more, but there's been a lot of work in a lot of broadcast companies on this side, on the business side. But to really do user-centered design, you have to look at the viewer, and you have to look at what makes sense to them if you really want to drive adoption and you want them to use your products over and over and be delighted by that. So when you look at authentication rates, yeah, we all want to do that. But to get people to use it, they have to first understand the benefits. So it's just matching up across, yeah, we want to support more than 200 MVPDs, but I don't want to look at 200, I want to find mine, right? So these kind of things, different platforms, data measurement, we just heard about that from one of this NBC speakers. He had some great stats. But again, we don't use that just to say how many people watch that video. We try to do some pathing to see what they used, what's important to them, where they go back to. And then the reference design is to work across the networks that we have. And then if you go forward, we're also working with CTAM and kind of leading some of the initiative there to make a consistent picker, not just for Turner, but out in the industry as well. So we've taken this practice of like the top 9, okay, the cognitive load of 9 is less than the cognitive load of 12, is less than the cognitive load of 15 that you see in some of these. So we're trying to get it down to the top 9, which serve, for most people, about 85% of the MVPDs. Predictive search, if they go to see all my providers, if they're not in that. And then also, a lot of MVPDs want us to use their marketing name, not their actual company name. So sometimes there's some confusion in that. So we have that in a full list. And I think in the earlier panel that Angie mentioned, Britt from CTAM mentioned this, but you can go down to ctamtve.com and there's a whole list of user recommendations there. Want to go forward? And then really, here's the picker, not just for all the networks the same, but across all the devices. Again, really important to the user-centered design and user experience to have people see the same thing and, oh, okay, I did it over here, I can do it over here, I'm through it that much faster. So that, I just wanted to kind of use that as a use case of how you use user-centered design to make something that's core to the business better.
Thank you very much. So, Scott, let's hear about Roku.
Sure, you want to play our gratuitous ad first?
Let's go right into that gratuitous ad.
Meet America's favorite streaming players. The biggest streaming channel lineup. Watch what you love. Pay only for what you want. Over 1,800 channels. More than 200,000 movies and TV episodes. 10 million players sold and counting. Roku. Now this is TV.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
We're right in the hot spot of Q4, so we're overflowing with video. Anyway, I run the New York office and Roku's ad business. If my UX colleagues knew I was on a panel about UX, they would flip out because I often do battle looking for new ways of integrating brands into our experience. There's 2 parts to our ad business. One is helping promote content partners on our platform. It's sort of a new generation tune-in business. We run a really vibrant business there. And then the other side of the business is helping brands who've traditionally invested in TV and are looking to reach that next generation TV viewer who maybe has cut or shaved the cord, helping those brands reach a connected TV viewer. And just to tie it to the panel here, we're very lucky in having an incredibly engaged user base. We blow away everybody else in the category in terms of time per user, sessions per week, whatever your metrics are. And that really is the gift of a very simple and intuitive UX. We can talk more about that later.
Excellent. And Sean at Peel.
Hello, everyone. The idea behind Peel is that the remote control is the single most antiquated piece of technology most people have in their homes. It really hasn't evolved in the 50 or 60 years since it was first introduced. And we're focused on revolutionizing it in 2 real fundamental ways. The first is getting it connected to the internet. By connecting it to the internet, it can basically redefine the remote control. Instead of being a dumb dumb box that you hold in your hand and keep your eyes on the TV as you flip channels. It can actually be your search and discovery vehicle, and it can have intelligence in it, and it can be personalized to you. It can have recommendations. It can layer in social context, so you can see what your friends are watching. It could show you what's on demand or on a variety of other services, and it really sort of changes what people think of as their remote. The other is basically getting rid of it. We believe most everybody has a device in their hands when they're trying to figure out what to watch that has infinitely more technological prowess than a remote control does and can be the remote. And so what we've been doing is working to convince device manufacturers like Samsung, LG, HTC, etc., to build remote control functionality directly into their devices. So every Samsung mobile device in the world, HTC device, all these other devices come with our app actually preloaded on them, and they come with remote control functionality built into them. So if you look at the top of any Samsung phone, it's got a little piece of black glass that's an infrared blaster that allows it to be your remote control. And if you flip to the next slide, you can see some of the stats on our company. We've been preloaded on about 200 million devices worldwide. We've been activated on over 110 million devices, and we get about 8 billion remote control interactions per month. So people use us as their remote control quite a bit. Flipping to the next slide, we're available worldwide in basically every country where there's a TV, and our tech works on pretty much every TV, every set-top box in the world, because they're all controlled by infrared. The part of the company that I was brought on to spearhead, though, is taking all of that technology that's powering our app and giving it to the rest of the world to utilize. The idea is that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of companies that are in the digital TV space that would like to be able to control your TV or control your set-top box. And our tech, because of the way we're preloaded on so many devices and we have all the information about every TV manufacturer and set-top box, can do that. And so if you're ESPN and you've got your scores app where you're showing people the scores of all the games, it would be great if each score is tunable, and so you could just tap that and it tunes your television or your set-top box. If you're NBC and you're going out onto Twitter or Facebook and saying, tune in now to my show, as every network does for every show. By the way, you can flip to the next slide. The idea is, instead of just saying tune in now and having no idea of the efficacy of that call to action of trying to get people to tune in, it's now quantifiable pretty much for the first time ever. And instead of just saying tune in now, you say tap here to tune in now. And you can see examples on the left of what we've done with Showtime Boxing and AMC for The Walking Dead, where they've transformed their social activity into really being a quantifiable call to action, where they know how many people are clicking on those tweets and Facebook posts to actually tune in. And then the business side of the company is advertising. We look at those 8 billion remote control commands per month as page views, and there's a lot of inventory by which our partners can try and advertise to get people to their shows. And we're one of the only companies in the world where actual tune-ins driven is a KPI for us. And we often account for as much as 5% of a ratings bump in a lot of our advertisers' campaigns.
Thank you, Sean. Adam Lowy from Dish.
Thank you. So glad to be here, Gerard. Thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know about Dish, we're the third largest MVPD, 14 million subscribers, and we are 100% focused on the customer. And what is so fascinating and interesting is I work in Dish media sales, and I have that crazy dance every day of who's the customer, right? So we have our subscribers at home. Those are our customers, but also in advertising. I've got brands and agencies that are my customers. So it's a fascinating dance, and I work very closely every day with new products. And what you see here are 4 things that I spend a lot of my time with in terms of who's the customer, how can I make sure that both are pleased, are happy, have the best user experience, have the best opportunity to work with us, and get the best responses and data back. Everyone knows about the Hopper. It's our satellite box out there along with the Joeys. Fascinating product. There's app experiences on there. It really juices up the experience of a MVPD or an operator. And in terms of user experience in this panel, I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But just some of the items on there are just incredible to use. Easy, fast, simple, smart. And in terms of addressable, interactive, those are sales products that we have out there that basically are all about working with the consumer and bringing intimacy, passion, and making sure that we deliver the right advertisements and the right message to you. And with the interactivity, we're allowed to get responses back and look at the data and look at the usage and really see how our performance is and how the consumer is reacting to us, which is wonderful to have and a great tool. And the next slide, very simply, just talks about what kind of juices it up a little more, where we have our Dish Anywhere and Dish Explorer apps. Dish Anywhere is basically our TV Everywhere component, and Dish Explorer is our second screen where you can basically work with programs and interact with them, go social, that sort of stuff. But again, really juicing up the MVPD experience and really kind of going the next step, as well as our over-the-top product, which we're going to be launching quite soon. But again, kind of taking to the next step as an operator.
Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate that. So, folks, let's talk to our entire panel here and have a dialogue about 360 UX. And let's start with the first question here. The UX we know is critical. It's the relationship between you and the customer. And as you pointed out, there's another customer you have to think about as well all the time. You probably all agree the UX is important, but let's talk about the relationship between that and your business. Tell me a bit about what you're doing that is not just creating the right navigation, but rather what are you doing to ensure that users and customers come back to your product time and again on a daily basis in most cases? Adam, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I can answer this for, I think, more broadly for YouTube, but maybe I'll just start with the spaces. Again, we're a physical location, and we're akin, I think, more to a retail shop than anything else. And so for us, it's really important to provide a degree of customer service or in-person customer service, a comfort level that sort of brings people in and makes them want to stay there and come back again. And then it's really about, I would say, about two things primarily: programming and equipment. And on the programming side, what I mean is more around what we schedule on a day-to-day basis in terms of workshops, events, activities. And so, we basically serve multiple customers. Also, we serve sort of the individual creator on YouTube up to top-tier media companies, and sometimes even brands who have gone through our partner program. And so it's important for us to tailor our offering in a way where we have something that's like an introduction to audience development, but also going down the line and getting sort of more advanced, either with equipment or with actually how to program and use analytics, for instance, on YouTube. And then the other side is just sort of staying relevant. So I think in terms of equipment, equipment changes, daily basically. And so what were a shelf of, or what was a shelf of a bunch of HD cameras is now quickly turning into a shelf of 4K cameras. And so making sure that we have sort of the most interesting opportunities for creators to come in, to both learn about and use and experiment with the newest equipment, I think is a huge factor in sort of how we keep people coming back on a day-to-day basis and sort of keep it fresh for the user experience.
Thank you. Rebecca, what are you doing to get people back day after day?
Well, I mean, in the new world that we're in right now, everybody talks about engagement, right? How long can you keep people? How are they going to hang in? Well, fundamentally, it requires an interaction, to do almost anything these days. So for Turner, we did set up the UX Center of Excellence because across our brands, I showed you all the brands, everybody was kind of siloed with their user, in the different brands. And so we pulled them together to say, let's tackle some of this stuff together. And so they have a place that they can share ideas, they can learn from each other, we can work on different things that some people, and we've even taken this now across into HBO, our sister companies, and Warner Brothers. So it's an initiative that makes a lot of sense for the company to raise the maturity level of best practice there so that some of the apps that we turn out, I'll just talk about one, was one that we completely re-architected in CAA. And they had the videos that were shown were buried. The usage wasn't anywhere where they wanted for either the consumer or the advertiser, just the engagement. And we set it up with content blocks and very dynamic, so it was easier for the user as well as the people publishing. And that's just one example. CNN Go is another example. I think, bottom line, one of the other things that we really do is we do a lot of usability testing. We try to get, like we did some testing for the March Madness apps during the games, during the tournament. And that was really insightful. I mean, you think that a lot of people, just get me to the video. And that's where we want to get them fast, right? We want to get them to the video as fast as we can during the game. But then also, like, there's lulls in the game, or they want to go out and do social, or they want to, see some stats, or they want to play their bracket, or whatever it is. So we had to combine that sensibly so that it did delight them. We got tons of usage through that too. So I think it's raising the maturity level of best practice to help both sides, right? The business and the consumer.
As you started discussing that, I wrote down here best practices. And I'd like to re-steer the question as we go here. And let's make this a dialogue for the benefit of the audience as well. And that is, Adam, as you talked about what you do to help an audience of producers come in and create great content for their ultimate audience, you're creating a community there. And I had the pleasure of going and visiting you and seeing that. It's really remarkable. So if any of you have the time and Adam has the willingness to let you in, it's really an amazing space. There is a community in there. As you have a community, what kind of best practice sharing is going on there? And I'll ask the rest of the panelists also, what are you all doing to help raise the bar in terms of best practices across the industry? Adam?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really about the second pillar, which is connect. And so that's why we focus so largely on bringing people in for these social events, or, we call them social events, but it could be anything like a panel, a screening, down to a happy hour where people are just sort of hanging around and having a few drinks and pizza. And so the type of thing that they can do there is meet each other, talk to each other. You may be working with someone who, you may be a team of small people who don't have an editor, and you're looking for an editor. And so this is a place for you to come in and potentially find that. Or you may want to share audience with another channel. And so if you have other channels who are coming in to these events and you meet them, you can potentially be working together. And this is the kind of thing that we see happen all the time. The other side of it is, of course, just sharing best practices from experts within YouTube, and we often also refer to ourselves as a teaching hospital, and the idea that people can come in, experiment, innovate. We think about sort of what's happening, we take a look at what's happening, we document what's happening, we polish it up, and then we spit it back out and scale it out to creators both at the space via live courses and a lot of times online via our materials that are that are globally available. And just to make mention, anyone with a YouTube channel is invited to come see the space. So if you do want to come by and see it, you can. There's plenty of events.
Adam, you look like you want to say something here. I'm curious, in the same vein, you're dealing with media companies, right? So what are the advertisers and brand companies saying, and how are you building a community?
So first off is know your customer, right? So that's before anything, right? Who are you talking to? What's the messaging? What's the objectives? What are your messaging points? And again, ad sales guy talking here, but before you do anything, you've got to know who you're talking to and what needs to be delivered. That's the first and foremost. Then once you figure that out, then you have to tailor accordingly. You want something that's, again, ad sales, interactive or addressed. Who or what is a message going to, and how do I get it to them in the most effective way? You read the data, you look at it, you find out how it best works, and you kind of repeat and rinse and move further from there. But what I like to always do is I really spend a lot of time just learning before I start about what the messaging is, who's the customer, what are your objectives, what are your initiatives.
Scott, you've got a community of application developers providing content. How are you advancing the state of the art in their user experience relationship with the customer?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time with partners studying. This is part of what my team does, studying how their apps are performing and how promotions of their apps impact that usage. It's a practice we've been building over the last couple of years, and it's it's one of the parts of our contract with our partners when we put them on the platform, that we're there to be their Sherpa of sorts to make sure they're successful. And so we spend time not just looking at how their app is performing in isolation, but we're also able to contextualize that and against other apps in the category, against the platform as a whole. In the TV Everywhere category, we're able to help partners look at whether authentication or bounce rates are different across the ecosystem. It's an essential part, I think, of how we've driven engagement, that we have kept the UX simple, we've kept it consistent, and we've been tuned in to how partners perform and actively sharing insights back with them. A lot of the platforms in the space, they sort of, they ship it and they move on. The OS, they ship it and they move on. The apps, they ship and they move on. They just don't, they regard themselves as hardware companies, and they don't really pay attention to the app business. We consider that part and parcel of what we do.
And then, Sean, you have a massive, massive audience out there. The numbers are remarkable. And I'm curious, we're talking about best practices here, sharing amongst the community. Are you collecting data that is useful to your partners?
Absolutely. We collect a ton of interesting data about what people are watching, when they're watching it, how long they're watching it for. We generate profiles where we say, all right, for me, in the morning, I'm going to watch news or sports, but in the evening, I'm going to watch something very different. But we're very much, and that goes into our advertising, that goes into our partners, that goes into our recommendations. But we're very much focused on using that to improve the UX. And going back to your question, it's all about the user experience and making it compelling and easy. We believe very strongly that the killer app for TV is TV. People don't care how they get their TV. When I want to watch The Walking Dead or Homeland on Sunday night, I don't care if it's coming over the air, over cable, streaming, downloading, brought over SneakerNet by my mailman. I don't care. I want to watch the show. And what matters is that I'm able to watch my show, and so we're very much focused on aggregating the universe of content that's available to our users, regardless of how it gets to them, because that's not what's important to them. And then two, seamlessly getting them to that show. At the end of the day, masses don't really care about the technology. Geeks like us want to be able to say, yeah, I connected this to that, and then I made this magic happen. At the end of the day, people want to watch their Homeland. And if you make it easy and seamless, they're going to do it, and they're going to come back over and over and over again. And so that's what we focus on doing, is getting them the content and doing all the hard work under the hood, and just when they say, I want to watch this, making it happen on their TV seamlessly.
So binge viewing, we all love this new concept, right? We believe that Netflix started it. Everyone else is jumping on board because it's one of those behaviors that came up really fast. And as the gentleman from NBCU said in the last panel or last presentation, these behaviors are changing faster than ever before in history. It keeps us all very, very busy in our occupations. So it's about the content, right? And content's hard to come by because it's licensed and it's carefully doled out in windows so that the producer gets the maximum value out of it. But what are you doing to help in your respective companies to get the customer the content they want when they want it, whether it's on any device or through any means, or particularly interesting through the mail, which hasn't happened in a while, I suppose. So let's hear some thoughts about that. And Rebecca, you're ready to go.
I'm going to argue with you just for a second about the binge viewing that Netflix created. I don't believe that, okay? Whoever did the first movie marathon or Bond or whatever it was, Elvira with Halloween, that was binge viewing. What Netflix did was make it easier to do.
I agree.
And basically, that is the core of UX, is to take something that somebody's already doing and make it easier for them to do. I mean, in a traditional set-top, you're going to have 7 clicks to watch whatever the next show is, right? With Netflix, it just came up. And so that's what I really like about the industry right now, is how competitive it's starting to be around the user experience. It really was. I mean, a lot of that stuff, like you made the point, Sean, stayed the same for a really long time. Now you're seeing more innovation, and that's being driven because there's more competition and many more platforms. So I think people want to get to the content, and you have to be, if you're going to do like companion apps, or you're going to do interactive layers, or they're going to want to pause, or you've really got to take that core viewing experience and whatever the next gen of all this is, make it sensible for what they want to do, not just add a bunch of features because we can.
But sometimes what is sensible can't happen because there's a license in the way of making that happen, right? And I'll even go back to what I agree with you, that the analogy was there, the paradigm was there years ago. How many of you have children in this audience? All right, if you have children, chances are they were doing serialized television watching in an analog way. Right. Where's the Disney tape? Where's the next Disney tape? And so on. That kind of thing is being modernized and improved. But if Disney doesn't want to license that content to you, you're kind of stuck. So how do you still satiate that appetite for series viewing if you have only a window out of the entire series?
So for us at Peel, what we're doing is really focusing on universal search and aggregating everything that's legally available to our users, whether it's on linear, whether it's on VOD, whether it's online, doesn't matter. We're trying to pull in every catalog of legal content, whether Netflix, Dish Network's VOD, Dish Network's lineup, etc., so that when you say, I want to watch Homeland, we'll show you, here's all the episodes of Homeland, which one do you want to watch, and here's the way it's available to you. And then move on to the next one, and if the next one's not available on your VOD, we find it elsewhere for you and push it to you that way.
It's accessibility, right? And portability, if you want to say it as well that way. It's got to be accessible, no matter where you are, how you're watching, whether it's on a device or a tablet, or it's got to be accessible for multiple platforms in multiple ways, and therefore, it's in front of you as a consumer. A couple of things. I think binge viewing is somewhat a bit overblown. It's a fun words to say, but it's always been happening. I agree with that. My kid's been binge viewing for years. He watches the same episodes over and over and over again of some kids shows, but that's a different story. But I think also something to think about too is technically when you go to devices and as an operator, the speed of things, the speed of how things load. Everyone hates that loading window, and everyone hates when you're trying to find a show or something on YouTube or something like that, and you have to wait more than like 2 seconds. You're done. Right? So as we're evolving and we're getting more involved with content and competition, the speed of things is so important. I look at data when we have an app, and if something loads more than 6 or 7 seconds, to me it's no good. Right? It's got to be faster than that. So we need things now. We need it quick, and when we press a button, we expect it to be up and running within that second.
So in the early days of streaming video online, of course, there was lots of waiting. Today, not as much. It's still there, not as much. But if you're looking for that piece of content and you can't find it for one reason or another, or the system's telling me it's unavailable, so many consumers might start thinking, YouTube has millions of choices for me. Why don't I go there? So in a spirit of competition here, how do you guys battle with each other in terms of the MVPDs versus the over-the-top guys? Some of you sit on both sides of that fence. Rather interesting combination of things. But go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to jump into how we compete with each other, because I think there are probably numerous ways, but I think we also all kind of offer different things in certain regards. And one of the things that occurred to me as we were talking about this is the user experience is very dependent on a number of things and can be wildly different even within the same product, depending on what the content is, depending on who the end user is, depending on what device they're watching from. And so, in the case of Peel, for instance, if you're watching television and you're going through kind of the remote control functionality, you're in a very much of a lean back mode, and I'm not sure if there's social interaction on there as well, but for folks who want to be involved and sort of have that social experience, like they might be able to jump in and sort of comment to each other. On YouTube, it's the type of thing where I think a lot of people think of us first as short form and maybe the opposite of binge viewing, although I know that we have a very hardcore audience who spends hours of time on YouTube as well, and for the most part, and I'm generalizing, I think a lot of that audience wants to engage and leave comments and, chat with their friends while they're doing it, even be off of YouTube and involved with some other app or service to sort of facilitate that. Same thing actually happens with television too, right? So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's knowing what you're good at and delivering that, and not trying to inundate or be everything to everyone, which is I think what you were trying to say earlier, and also relying on what's out there. I think people are naturally, we don't put a hard line between sort of promoting your Facebook or your Twitter on YouTube. I think that's a really important part to people who are creating on YouTube and who are using YouTube. And so, again, I think the experience goes beyond maybe even the walls of a product, because there are so many pieces that go into actually consuming content at this point, and there are so many devices that you can do it from.
I think the key thing is the content strategy is evolving, because if you look at the early days of VOD, it might not, and even today, you might not have the same exact catalog over in TVE land. Right. So it's kind of bifurcated in some ways because they're different verticals. They're delivered differently. They're all.
How do you save the consumer from that complexity?
But that's what we're working on, and people are working on, to try to say, because you want to be able to move, some of the forward thinking, you want to be able to move between devices and have the same piece of content, but people don't necessarily want to register with you because what am I getting for that, right? You got to give to get and all that. I see that content strategy evolution as the key piece of this, and I think the earlier panel talked about monetization and ways to make the business work better. So I think as that happens, I think that content will be more consistent.
So do you serve the consumer well by, as Sean was saying, tell them when something's not available?
We don't typically do that. We just show what's available. I mean, we might show something that's coming up, though. We promo stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And it depends on what kind of app it is, too, because, yeah.
I think it's a problem for binge viewing. I mean, I'm in the middle of watching Walking Dead. I'm pretty current on it, and just I got Fios at home. I've got a Roku. I'm willing to spend money to buy it, to get it sooner. It hits Amazon sooner than it hits Fios VOD. I just think the complexities of where stuff lives is always going to be lost on the average consumer, and you're just not going to convince my mother why something's here and it's not over there. If she associates Walking Dead with the AMC brand, she wants to have AMC be the entity that tells her where it is. Or go to a universal search type function, an independent, and we have a universal search function as well, and help the user decipher that. The business model is what it is. This stuff's going to live where it's going to live, and that artifact of our business isn't going to go away, but it's not good for the consumer, and it's not good for overall consumption.
In a world like YouTube, the metadata associated with that content is fully available through YouTube. I don't know if it's published for any other consumers out there, consuming entities. But in the world of professional, and I shouldn't say professional, more MVPD delivered channels, that metadata is closely held. It goes along with the license to distribute that content. Quick question, short answer please. Do you believe that should be separated so that the search and discovery mechanisms available to consumers can flourish outside and separate from the actual consumption rights?
I believe it should be and is starting to be. I think most networks recognize the value of their metadata being ubiquitously available. And Showtime, and I think I see David sitting over here, has been really great about saying, we want people to find our stuff wherever it is all the time, and saying, here, take our APIs for all of our content for Showtime Anywhere, and focusing on ubiquity. And I think we're going to see other networks and companies following that lead of recognizing that the more that's out there for people to discover and the easier you make it, the better it is for them.
Yeah, we're a little bit like late 90s web thinking. The business is still evolving, but I think some folks sort of want to protect that metadata on the assumption that I want them to come to me to find it, and if I syndicate that metadata, I'm going to lose them. And I think it's thinking that, as Sean implied, it's thinking that I think will go by the wayside, and folks will evolve to Web 2.0, and they'll start to realize I am not going to be the originator of all my traffic. Right? I've got to, as part of my consumer marketing strategy, I've got to have my tendrils out there where people can, find my content and come to me.
Folks, I'm getting the sign that we have to close. So I'd like to turn to you and ask for a very, very brief one-sentence prognostication as to where the 360-degree view of the UX is going over the next 5 years. I'll give you a pretty wide window and lots of latitude there. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just say mobile. I think that it's already happening, and people are, using their mobile device to scroll through content, to watch content, to connect via content, and to engage with others, and talk about content. So I think that's really the key. It's in the power of your pocket at this point, and whether that's driving your in-home experience or driving your content creation experience, I see that as sort of what's coming down the pike.
I'm going to pile on and say cross-platform consistency, because I think that's going to be really important.
I think in 5 years you'll start in one place for your TV experience, and you'll likely have a pay TV package, and it'll be all IP based, and it'll be brought to you through a combination of existing MVPDs and virtual MVPDs, and it'll be integrated seamlessly with 100% on-demand services, and to the consumer that will be their TV.
It's going to be a combination of ubiquitous search and seamless access. In 5 years, Scott's mom's not going to have to think about how I can watch that episode of The Walking Dead. It's just going to be, I want to watch it, and it's going to happen.
I agree with that. Cross-platform, aggregation, and I think the key word is partnerships. Right? We're hearing more and more partnerships, more and more working together, so we can provide the consumer what they want, where they want, how they want it. And it's all of us pretty much working together and doing these cross-platform opportunities.
Excellent. Panelists, thank you very much for coming out today, and please enjoy the rest of the TVOT conference. Thank you.